Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump ordering D.C.'s police force under federal control. He's vowing a crackdown on violent crime. What the changes mean for the nation's capital. Mari Otsu at the White House. President Trump previews his upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, what he says about the future of Ukraine's territory. The president also confirms that NVIDIA will be giving the U.S. government a 15% cut of its sales to China. Jack Bradley reports. Ukraine says Russia is preparing a new offensive despite peace efforts by the U.S. Arian Pozdar has what Kyiv is saying about the situation on the battlefield. Controversy erupts after Israeli forces kill an Al Jazeera reporter in the Gaza Strip. Israel says he was also a Hamas terrorist. Jason Perry with the details. And multiple explosions at a U.S. steel plant near Pittsburgh kills one person and leaves another unaccounted for. Authorities are investigating the cause of the incident.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump today taking the step of placing Washington, D.C.'s police force under direct federal control. It's part of a sweeping effort to curb violent crime in the nation's capital. NTD's Mari Otsu has more from the White House.
This is Liberation Day in D.C. and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back.
In a packed briefing room today, President Trump announced he's officially placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control and sending 800 National Guardsmen to counter violent crime in the nation's capital.
I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed. You want to have safety in the streets, and you don't have that now. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher.
President Trump adds he may also deploy active duty military to address D.C. crime if it's needed. At the briefing, the White House gave us this fact sheet showing the 2024 murder rate per 100,000, with Washington, D.C.'s rate almost double that of Bogota, the capital of Colombia. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser responded to President Trump's presser, citing numbers showing that D.C. crime rate has been coming down.
I did not know that the request of MPD would be made. I believed that they would announce that they were going to call up the National Guard.
While the White House highlights that a D.C. police commander was suspended last month for allegedly manipulating crime data. Last week, the president directed federal law enforcement agencies to increase their presence in Washington for 7 days. And in this fact sheet, the White House shows us photos of criminals removed from D.C. streets this weekend. This man was arrested for carrying dangerous drugs, and another man for trying to sell narcotics and carrying a gun illegally. President Trump says in addition to more police presence, what will be more effective is to ultimately change the rules and regulations. U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro, also at the briefing, vows to change the D.C. laws that give lenient punishments to young people committing violent crimes.
I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else, that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I can't arrest them. I can't prosecute them. They go to family court and they get to do yoga and arts and crafts. Enough. It changes today.
The White House says the number of juveniles arrested in D.C. has gone up each year since 2020, and many of those juveniles have had prior arrests for violent crimes. In addition to ramping up punishments, President Trump is also pushing to change the no cash bail policies in cities like D.C., New York, and Chicago. Trump says as Republicans hold the majority in Congress, they can vote to change this statute. Reporting from the White House, Mari Otsu, NTD News.
House and Senate Republicans have renewed their push for Congress to retake control over the District of Columbia. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details on the story.
Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Andy Ogles have renewed their push to pass the Bringing Oversight to Washington and Safety to Every Resident Act, otherwise known as the Bowser Act. Senator Mike Lee posted on social media that Congress has the power and duty to govern D.C. Home rule is a disaster, transforming our capital into a crime-ridden mess. Repeal it, restore congressional oversight, and make D.C. a safe, shining example. The senator is referring to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which clearly mandates Congress to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district as may, by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States. The district referred to in the Constitution was created in 1801 after the states of Virginia and Maryland ceded 10 square miles for the creation of our nation's capital, and Congress has directly governed the District of Columbia from 1801 until 1973, when the Home Rule Act was passed by Congress, creating the mayor's office and the 13-seat D.C. Council. The Bowser Act seeks to repeal this arrangement.
We have 15 vacancies in the Superior Court, which we need to go down to the Congress for approval. We have 2 vacancies in the Court of Appeals, which we need to go down. So anytime you have a backlog in the courts, you have delayed justice and people are less safe.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has blamed Congress for its judicial backlog and insisted that there is no crime crisis or homelessness crisis in our nation's capital.
When he left the White House the last time at the height of COVID, he had a lot of concerns about homelessness, as did we. Those conditions simply don't exist now.
This comes as the Metropolitan Police Department has suspended a commander for tampering with crime statistics, and after the police union accused the department of deliberately falsifying crime data. If Congress does not pass the Bowser Act, President Trump could effectively end D.C.'s Home Rule Act by reinstating the Control Board, which was passed under President Clinton by Congress to override the mayor's or the 13-seat D.C. Council's decisions. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Could Congress step in to back up Trump's crackdown on crime in D.C., and will other cities attempt to repeal their no-cash bail policies, as Trump is urging? Tune into Capitol Report tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to hear from Texas Congressman Keith Self. Ukraine and Russia may need to redraw their territorial lines. That's what President Trump said today ahead of his upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
I'm going to meet with President Putin.
President Trump says that he'll discuss swapping land between Ukraine and Russia with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday in their upcoming meeting.
Because there'll be some land swapping to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has strongly opposed ceding any land to Russia. But in this war, Russia's occupied very key locations of Ukraine. And Trump says that he was bothered by Zelenskyy's recent comments about the hurdles it would take to reach a deal.
I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelenskyy was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap.
In Friday's meeting, Trump says that he'll tell Putin that it's time to end the war with Ukraine, and that he'll know within the first 2 minutes of meeting with Putin whether or not a deal can be reached. Following that, he said he'll call Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy and European allies to discuss the next steps and a potential meeting with Putin and Zelenskyy.
The next meeting will be with Zelenskyy and Putin, or Zelenskyy and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need.
Trump has threatened secondary tariffs on Russia's trading partners if a deal isn't reached. And we saw that by the end of this month, the U.S. will have a 50% tariff on India, which purchases large amounts of Russian oil despite sanctions. And China is Russia's largest purchaser of oil. It's an act that Trump calls fueling the war machine in Ukraine. Meanwhile, on Monday, Trump confirmed that NVIDIA will pay the federal government 15% of their revenue from semiconductor sales to China. And in exchange, Trump is granting NVIDIA export licenses to sell what are known as H20 chips in China, which are not as high-tech as the newer chip models, but there is a market for them.
So I said, listen, I want 20% if I'm going to approve this for you, for the country. He said, would you make it 15?
Now, Trump added that he's not allowing NVIDIA to sell its most advanced Blackwell chip to China, but it's possible that that could happen in the future, as those discussions could likely come up as part of an overall trade deal with the U.S. and China. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Just days before President Trump's meeting with Russia's Vladimir Putin, Ukraine accuses Russia of preparing a new offensive, moving troops to launch more attacks. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more on efforts to achieve peace in the Russia-Ukraine war.
President Trump is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy now says Russia is preparing for more attacks on Ukraine, despite peace efforts by the U.S.
They are moving their troops to launch new offensive operations. If someone is preparing for peace, this is not what he does.
Various officials, including President Trump, have previously accused Putin of not actually seeking peace. Zelenskyy now says the situation has not changed, despite the planned meeting between Trump and Putin.
Putin is only determined to present a meeting with America as his personal victory, and then continue acting exactly as before.
And European leaders are weighing in on the talks between the two presidents. The Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, says the US pledged to consult with Europe ahead of the summit. Tusk says it's important that Ukraine shouldn't lose any territory as part of a possible peace deal.
It must be obvious that state borders can't be changed by force. Russia's war with Ukraine must not bring benefits to the aggressor.
President Trump on Monday said that some land might switch control between Russia and Ukraine. Trump says he plans to make Russia return some of the areas it annexed. A spokesperson for the Chancellor of Germany confirms that he also spoke with President Trump on Sunday. The Chancellor agrees with the Polish Prime Minister, saying Ukraine shouldn't lose any land.
Borders must not be changed by force. This principle remains, and all further decisions that may arise ultimately lie in the hands of Ukraine.
He added that it's crucial that Ukraine will be involved in the peace process, saying Kiev must be able to decide its own fate. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Israeli forces report striking an Al Jazeera journalist in the Gaza Strip. Many have condemned the strike, but Israel says the reporter was also a Hamas terrorist. NTD's Jason Parry has the story.
Residents in the Gaza Strip visited the site where Al Jazeera journalist Anas al-Sharif and 4 of his reported colleagues were killed by an Israeli airstrike. Israel accused him of leading a Hamas terrorist cell. On the other hand, a Palestinian journalist accused Israel, which he calls the occupation, of trying to stop the truth from being reported.
I tell the occupation that your bombardment on us increases our determination and resolve in conveying the voice of the suffering of our people in Gaza.
Footage from Al Jazeera shows al-Sharif reporting from various locations in the Gaza Strip before he was killed. A senior Al Jazeera journalist said that Israel's allegations against al-Sharif were fabricated. Now some may be wondering how al-Sharif could be a terrorist when he's seen on video reporting the news. However, a former hostage who was held in Hamas captivity in the Gaza Strip posted on X, "I was held by a journalist in captivity, and his father was a doctor." Israel said that al-Sharif was responsible for directing rocket attacks against Israeli civilians and troops. Israel also said they had previously released documents found in the Gaza Strip that confirmed al-Sharif's military affiliation to Hamas. Israel's ambassador to the U.S. posted a photo on X of al-Sharif with the late Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, and also a screenshot from al-Sharif's Telegram account on the day of the October 7th massacre, which read, 9 hours and the heroes are still roaming the country, killing and capturing. However, Israel's strike on al-Sharif still brings criticism because members of the press are supposed to be off limits in wartime. Hamas has been accused of using other methods for protection that are against international law to strike during war as well, such as hospitals, schools, places of worship, and even the civilian population. In another development, Australia has become the next country that plans to recognize Palestine as a state, joining France and Canada. And the UK said it would do the same unless a ceasefire is reached by September. In a recent interview on the World Over podcast, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that talks for a ceasefire with Hamas fell apart on the day France said it would recognize Palestine as a state. And Rubio said that Hamas no longer had any reason to negotiate for a ceasefire because it could be rewarded with statehood and claim it as a victory. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Explosions at a U.S. steel plant near Pittsburgh today killed one person and injured at least 10 others. One person is still unaccounted for. Emergency services said a fire at the plant started this morning. The plant is considered the largest coking operation in North America. The facility is one of 4 major U.S. steel plants in Pennsylvania that employ several thousand workers. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro posted on X saying he and his wife were praying for the Clinton community. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman called the explosion absolutely tragic and vowed to support steelworkers in the aftermath. Authorities are investigating the cause of the incident. Coming up, Texas Democrats remain out of state, delaying a vote on redrawing the state's congressional districts. Governor Abbott says he'll call one special session after the next until they return. And what's something that can be annoying, can pose a national security risk, but can bring a lot of convenience and save money? Not a bird, not a plane, it's drones. Kevin Hogan brings us an in-depth report on the rise of American drone dominance after the break. At least 3 people were killed in a shooting at a Target store in Austin, Texas this afternoon. Police say the suspect is in custody.
The police were initially called here at 2:15 p.m. for a hotshot call. Officers arrived within 4 minutes. When officers arrived, they were met with 3 people that were shot inside the parking lot of Target. The suspect fled the scene, stole a car from the scene, took that car, wrecked that car, then hijacked another car. He was then found by Austin PD in South Austin, where he was taken into custody after a tasing.
Austin police say they have yet to identify the victims and the suspect, but they know the suspect is a male, believed to be 32 years old with a mental health history. Law enforcement say they don't yet know the motive behind the shooting. This is a developing story, and we will keep you updated. The Lone Star State legislative stalemate has yet to be resolved. Members of the Texas House of Representatives were once again unable to reach a quorum today. This comes after Democrats fled the state last week in order to hinder a Republican-led redistricting effort. That effort could potentially result in another 5 U.S. House seats during the 2026 midterms. Texas House Speaker Dustin Burrows also blamed fellow Democrats for holding up critical funding in the wake of devastating flooding in Texas.
Members, may I have your attention? Those bills are set to be on the floor tomorrow. And I know those of us present are eager to take action on them. The only thing standing between Texas and real disaster relief is whether our absent colleagues decide to show up tomorrow.
The standoff is happening in the midst of a special legislative session in Texas. Absent lawmakers are subject to a fine of $500 a day. U.S. Senator John Cornyn said he's asked the FBI to help state law enforcement track down the absent Democratic legislators. The newly proposed congressional map of Texas said to favor Republicans has drawn national attention. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
The democratic system in this country is broken because who you vote for doesn't necessarily get reflected in who your representatives are. We're just trying to rebalance the scales and, frankly, push back against a very unfair system created by the Democrats.
The Department of Justice says the current maps are unconstitutional because they contain coalition districts where racial minorities are combined to make up a majority of the population. Democrat lawmakers from the state fled to blue states last week to delay a vote on the new map.
Greg Abbott is threatening to remove us from our duly elected positions. Ken Paxton is sending out tweets asking his followers to hunt us down. And then we got a bomb threat at the hotel where we're staying this past week. But we are not backing down because this is a lot bigger than us.
The standoff continues with no end in sight. Texas Governor Greg Abbott pushing back, vowing to call special sessions back to back.
I'm going to call another one, then another one, then another one, then another one. If they show back up in the state of Texas, they will be arrested and taken to the Capitol. If they want to evade that arrest, they're going to have to stay outside of the state of Texas for literally years.
Democratic lawmakers say their dramatic exit is for a just cause. They see the maps as a power grab to ensure Republicans hold Congress after the midterms. Democrat states of New York and California are planning to redraw their own maps in response.
And we didn't intend to do this again until the 2032 elections. But because we're in a different situation altogether.
We're causing a redistricting civil war in America.
The Democrats have not indicated how long they plan to delay the vote. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Drones, they can do a lot, making people's lives easier and cutting costs, but they can also see a lot. Critics say too much. President Trump wants American drone dominance, but why? And who's the leader? Our data reporter Kevin Hogan tells us what's in store for us in what's been dubbed the drone age.
Data projections reveal the drones are coming. The FAA says 822,000 drones are registered and rising. What does that mean? Saving costs on lightweight deliveries, convenience, a big boost to first responders. The drawbacks? Major national security concerns and privacy concerns. So why are drones in the spotlight? Because President Trump wants to integrate drones into society, build more and export them. He's given drones the stamp of approval. Now, that said, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International says that over 100,000 jobs were created in the last decade for drone-related purposes. Now, drones bring a lot of opportunity in telecommunications, sports, infrastructure, movie making, agriculture, public safety, etc. And the U.S. is embracing them. But who is winning the drone race? The rest of the world, outside of one company in China, sells only about 10% of the consumer drones. But one company in China, DJI, sells 90% of them. Now, that data is according to Grandview Research in 2024. China has market gravity. The U.S. wants to pull some of that away from companies that are beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. The U.S. wants to harness drones for the forthcoming reasons while minimizing the risks. That brings us to some of the pros of drones. These versatile tools can improve daily life and assist operations. For lightweight deliveries, they're much faster than ground transport. Amazon says they can ship them to your door in under an hour. That's lightning fast. And they can reportedly drive down the shipping costs, as you'll see here, especially for food and drink delivery. Here, a driver, sometimes stuck in traffic, earning a wage, paying for parking, and expecting a tip. Here, no gas, no tip, no oil change, no auto insurance. It's much cheaper. And for police, drones are the eyes in the skies. Surveillance, search and rescue with thermal cameras, drug interdiction, fugitive tracking, traffic control, so many ways. From foot patrol to sky patrol. And according to Commercial UAV News, as of last year, over 1,400 of these types of agencies were using drones for their law enforcement operations. That's up 54% over the last 6 years. But the drawbacks. A bill in Congress called the Countering CCP Drones Act would add the drones made by China's DJI to a banned list from which the U.S. government can't source its hardware. The concerns include data breaches, remote manipulation, and cyber attacks. So if the U.S. isn't making them and the future has drones in it, where are they coming from? Next concern, the Public Law Library calls for more drone surveillance laws. Drones capture a lot of footage, and sometimes that's unbeknownst to the observed. The library says there's only a patchwork of state laws not giving the protection needed for what they call the increasing ubiquity of drones. And then there's the noise, the constant buzzing. According to the University of Southampton, who's annoyed the most? City dwellers aren't really fazed, but suburbanites and rural folks report a big annoyance when drones are overhead. Now, the data for the North American drone market, according to Grandview Research, it's gone up from about $14 billion in 2018 up to about $27 billion in 2024. So where is that headed? All the way up to over $61 billion by 2030. Now, the expectation is that that will more than double. Now, that number is going up. The drones are coming. But when we look at that data very closely, we actually see it's not just a linear increase. We see that that rise is actually exponential. As I said at the beginning, the drones are coming. Back to you.
Coming up, as President Trump temporarily takes over D.C.'s police department to tackle crime, he also suggested removing homeless people from the city to make the nation's capital safer and more beautiful. How would all of this work legally? Attorney and legal analyst Bobby Ann Cox joins us to discuss after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump says his administration will make Washington, D.C. beautiful again. In addition to cleaning up crime, Trump says trash, potholes, and graffiti are also on the list. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
We're going to make it that. We're going to make it safe. We're going to make it smart. We're going to make it beautiful.
President Trump says that America's capital city should be one of the safest and most beautiful cities in the world, and he plans to make it just that.
We're going to restore the city back to the gleaming capital that everybody wants it to be.
He says his administration will be fixing up buildings and cleaning up the streets and sidewalks.
Not only are we stopping the crime, we're going to clean up the trash and the graffiti and the grime and the dirt and the broken marble panels.
This announcement comes about 5 months after President Trump signed the Making the District of Columbia Safe and Beautiful Again executive order. The March 27th order includes efforts to promote beautification of the city, as well as preserving the monuments and preventing crime. Trump says his administration is also taking action against homeless encampments.
We're going to be removing homeless encampments from all over our parks, our beautiful, beautiful parks, which now a lot of people can't walk on. They're very dirty.
Trump must go now! During Trump's announcement, dozens of protesters gathered outside of the White House. There were signs saying Trump must go now and no ICE, no National Guard. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced Monday morning that personnel from both ICE and Customs and Border Protection have been deployed in Washington. And the Department of Homeland Security posted a picturesque depiction of Capitol Hill around 1943. The post says, quote, "We can return." Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And joining us now to discuss is civil rights attorney Bobby Ann Cox. She's a fellow at the Brownstone Institute. Bobby Ann, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you here. Now, first, President Trump can temporarily take over D.C.'s police department, invoking the Home Rule Act. But reports say this expires in 30 days. Break down the law for us here, and what's Congress's role in all of this?
Well, that is correct. So under the D.C. Home Rule Act of 1973, the president can take over the police, the Metropolitan Police of Washington, D.C. And that lasts for 30 days once he declares an emergency of some sort. However, if he wants to continue controlling the Metropolitan Police Department after that 30 days expires, then he would have to get permission from Congress. So Congress would have to, in essence, pass a resolution, a joint resolution of both houses, allowing that 30-day time frame to be extended. That is not something that the president can just do on his own. So you are correct. It is a 30-day time frame. And this is something that is just specific to the Metropolitan Police Department for Washington, D.C. But do remember, the president does have control over other federal agencies, other law enforcement agencies at the federal level, which he is using. He has stated today that he's going to also be using, in addition to the Metropolitan Police, he's going to be using federal law enforcement as well. such as the FBI, DEA, ICE, and so on.
Now, on that note, D.C.'s mayor is calling Trump's police takeover, quote, unsettling and unprecedented in a presser today, but says the city isn't totally surprised. And D.C.'s AG is calling the takeover unlawful, adding that the city is exploring options to respond. What would those options look like? What legal avenues does the city have?
Right. Well, to be honest with you, in the instance of President Trump invoking Section 740 of the Home Rule Act, they don't really have a choice. The language is pretty clear when you read that provision or that section of the law. So they don't really have a way to stop him from declaring an emergency, which he has done, and taking over the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. for those 30 days. I do want to note, if Congress decides that it wanted to terminate that 30-day time frame sooner than 30 days, they do have the power to do that under the statute. Both houses of Congress could pass a joint resolution to terminate that state of emergency that is declared or has been declared by the president. But short of that, there really isn't something that the mayor of D.C. can do from a legal standpoint to stop him from invoking that Section 40 takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department.
And expanding on that, Bobby, and President Trump today floated the idea of taking over New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, other cities that he did in D.C. But can Trump federalize other city law enforcement agencies?
Well, so it is different. Washington, D.C. is not a state, as we all know. It is a district. It is a city. And our founding fathers actually created the District of Columbia to be the capital. And they didn't want that to be under control of any state government, which is why they made it federally controlled by the President of the United States. It goes back historically to an event that took place in 1783 when a group of members of the Army were upset and descended upon Philadelphia, which was at the time the capital. And, the governor of Pennsylvania at the time didn't do anything about it, nor did the city mayor at the time do anything about it. So our founding fathers actually said, look, this city needs to be, if it's the seat of government of this country, it needs to have direct control by the federal government, not subject to the states, not subject to a local mayor. So in 1973, there was this law, the D.C. Home Rule Act, that was passed by Congress. But there is a really strong argument that it is unconstitutional, because what it did was it allowed Washington, D.C. to have its own governing body. It has a mayor, as we know, and it also has a city council, so to speak. But that's only since 1973. So we're only talking about, 52 years that this has been in place. All prior to 1973, for those, almost 200 years, we have seen the federal government in control of Washington, D.C. So there is an argument here that the Home Rule Act altogether is not constitutional.
Well, Bobby Ann Cox, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
As President Trump announced a federal takeover of D.C.'s law enforcement, do city residents agree with the policy? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the streets of the nation's capital to hear from the people.
Do you feel safe being in D.C.? Have you noticed any criminal activities going on around here?
Me in general, being from the area, I feel safe, but I do work in community outreach, and I've been expressed multiple times that not everybody feels safe.
It's hard to say. You just kind of get used to it. That's my honest answer. I think, definitely at night a little bit more, but during the day I think it's fine.
Nothing seems to be warranted for making a greater presence of federal
even military people at all.
I live in Southeast area, not just in the Navy Yard, but I also live in Minnesota Avenue. We need to clean up all the criminal activities going on.
I'm not saying that it's a pleasant reality, but when you live in an urban area in this country, you know, there is things like that, and the best thing you can really do is walk away. It's rough. I mean, I honestly don't know how you can really stop it. I think it's a pretty institutionalized problem that happens all across our country.
President Trump announced that he is going to basically have a federal takeover of the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department, and then he's also moving all the homeless encampments out of D.C. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if it makes D.C. safer, I guess. I have a sister, like, if she can walk around D.C. safer and she feels safer, then I think that's a good thing.
I saw that article. I only briefly glimpsed at the caption that said something about moving them outside of D.C. Removing the problem from this area just puts it somewhere else. It doesn't actually solve the problem.
I don't think it'll make much a difference, to be honest with you. I mean, the only thing is it might provoke things, but I don't see how it would curtail things.
I feel good about Trump because that's my president. That's my president. Trump is my president. And what he's going to do for our people, not just for me, our people.
A trial began today examining the legality of President Trump's deployment of National Guard troops in Los Angeles. The judge heard testimony from leaders of an Army task force involved in the deployment. The trial will allow the judge to determine whether the president has the authority to federalize the Guard. NTD's David Lamb reports.
We're right in front of the San Francisco courthouse where a 3-day bench trial is being held on whether the National Guard was illegally deployed into Los Angeles during the immigration raids. Several witnesses testified on Monday, day one of the trials regarding Task Force 51, the military troops sent in June to protect law enforcement and federal buildings while protests were held during ICE raids. The case involves California Governor Gavin Newsom suing the Trump administration. Newsom has condemned the deployments as political theater, while the Trump administration said the deployment were to carry out federal duties and prevent chaos. Only about 300 of the 5,000 troops sent to Los Angeles remain in the area. According to the judge, Day 1 and Day 2 will be focused on whether the Posse Comitatus Act was violated by using federal troops as civilian law enforcement. The judge said on Day 3 there will be discussions on whether the state of California has the authority to even bring these claims to court. In San Francisco, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
Coming up, Fireaid raised $100 million after the California wildfires, but some survivors say they still haven't received any help. Christina Corona looks into where some of the money has gone. And in the AP's college football rankings, we have a new number 1 to start the season. Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we return. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A benefit concert raised $100 million to help wildfire survivors in California, but some victims say they haven't seen a dime. NTD's Christina Corona looks into where the Fireaid money went and who's actually getting the help.
We're here in Pacific Palisades 7 months after the deadly wildfires tore through Los Angeles. Now questions are growing on whether the $100 million raised from the Fireaid benefit concert is actually going towards the victims.
Earlier this year, music stars like Billie Eilish, Katy Perry, Green Day, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers performed at Fireaid concerts in Inglewood, California. The event raised an estimated $100 million for Palisades and Eaton fire victims, including a pledge from Los Angeles Clippers owner Steve Ballmer and his wife to match all donations. But local journalist and wildfire survivor Sue Pascoe from Circling the News says she can't track where the money is going. And now, California Congressman Kevin Kiley is demanding answers.
Tens of thousands of people donated, raising $100 million for what they were told was direct relief for the victims. But now we've learned that this money didn't go to the victims at all. Instead, it went to nonprofits, some of which have nothing to do with fire relief, where they promote things like voting and civic engagement and multi-generational power building. Some of them aren't even located in LA.
Kiley has asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to open an investigation to ensure the funds are properly allocated and the victims receive the aid they were promised. Survivors like Elisa Ruby Bash, who lost everything in the fire, including her home, her music studio, and therapy business, says she hasn't received anything from Fireaid.
Yes, we have definitely not received anything from Fireaid, and we have not received anything for a long time. It was more just in the very beginning that I think a lot of organizations and community and just individuals, I had a GoFundMe in the beginning, and so people reached me that way mostly.
But Fireaid says direct payments to individuals were never the plan. In a statement, the group says every dollar is being delivered through trusted nonprofits. Fireaid says its first round of grants gave $50 million to about 120 nonprofits in February. The second round, $25 million, targeted financial stability, housing, and mental health. NTD attempted to reach out to several nonprofits receiving Fireaid grants. Only 2 responded, confirming they each got $250,000. One, Pasadena Humane Society, said funds were used to board animals displaced by the fires and support their animal ICU and Helping Paws program. Another, Inclusive Action for the City, said their grant supported cash assistance for outdoor workers who lost homes, equipment, or income during the emergency. When asked how they found recipients, they said they used an application process and contacted eligible applicants to schedule appointments for assistance. I also spoke with Eaton Fire and Palisades victims who wish to remain off camera. They say they don't know anyone who's received aid or assistance from any of the Fireaid nonprofits.
The hopeful part of me wants to just believe that maybe, the organizations don't know how to contact to people who need it, and it's just too confusing, and there's not a lot of clarity. I think the residents that lost their homes are too overwhelmed to even begin at this point, just trying to live their lives, to find and track people down, and then the organizations probably don't know how to find the people.
A third round of grant applications for nonprofits to receive aid is now open. Fireaid has now hired law firm Latham & Watkins to review its governance and grant-making process, including whether funds are used as intended.
As the review into the Fireaid distribution unfolds, survivors are still waiting for answers and for help. Reporting from the city of Pacific Palisades, Christina Corona, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on today, but let's start in college football as the AP preseason poll released today with Texas at #1. What stood out to you in the rankings?
Believe it or not, this is the first time that Texas has been preseason #1. Arch Manning is primed to be their quarterback this year. Everybody's high on him and the job that head coach Steve Sarkisian has done with the Longhorns in general. Now, they will be tested very early on, though. Their opener is at defending champion Ohio State, which is preseason ranked 3rd. Now, this is actually a rematch of last year's playoff semifinal, which the Buckeyes won there. So Texas is 1st, Ohio State 3rd. In between, you've got Penn State at 2nd, Clemson then is 4th, and Georgia rounds out the top 5. Now, not surprisingly, the SEC had 10 teams ranked in the top 25. 4 were in the top 10 there. Big Ten had 6 teams overall, 2 in the top 3. Big 12 had 4 teams, but none in the top 10, and the ACC had 3. Plus, Notre Dame was ranked at 6, and Boise State was the only group of 5 team to make it there at number 25. So we already got the preseason rankings out. The season starts in less than 2 weeks, so I know you're looking forward to it. So am I.
We'll have a lot to talk about, but shifting gears to martial arts now. Paramount has reached an agreement to be the new home for the Ultimate Fighting Championship at UFC. When will this agreement take effect?
Yeah, this is going to start in 2026. Now, currently the UFC events are offered mainly on a pay-per-view basis via ESPN. Now, this will mean the events will then stream through Paramount Plus, which is a subscription service, costs between $8 and $13 a month, depending on the package. Some events will also simulcast on CBS. Now, for UFC, they currently have 13 marquee events per a year, plus they've got 30 fight nights. All of these get shifted to Paramount, and the deal is technically between Paramount and TKO Group, which owns the UFC as well as the WWE, so other events are on there as well too. This new deal is for 7 years worth more than $1 billion a year. Now, as an aside, of course, President Trump is a big UFC fan, good friends with their CEO, Dana White, and he wants to have that UFC fight next summer to celebrate America's 250th anniversary right on the lawn of the White House. So I'm definitely looking forward to us covering that event next summer, Tiff.
We should send you there. While looking at NFL preseason news, there was a scary situation Friday night as Detroit Lions safety Maurice Norris was injured and taken immediately to the hospital. What is his status today?
Yeah, very good news on this. He's out of the hospital. He's actually back at the team's practice facility today. Now, fortunately, fortunately very good news. This all happened Friday night. He was taken to a hospital after a scary collision. Looked like he went head first to tackle someone. His head kind of snapped back. He then lay really motionless, I would say, on the field. Took 20 minutes. They got an ambulance out. He was taken to a hospital. It's quite a delay. Afterwards, the players did not really want to play. I've never seen this before. They just snapped the ball and they just kind of stood around, let the clock run. Eventually, they held hands and prayed. And then the NFL ended up just canceling the game. Like I said, I've never actually seen that before. The next morning, Saturday, he sent out a social media post from the hospital maybe, saying that he was all good. Apparently he must have got released that day. Though head coach Dan Campbell today, he said that not only was Norris back at the team's practice facility, he said he was in the concussion protocol, will be reevaluated in 10 to 14 days. So I don't think he's actually practicing while you're in the concussion protocol, but at least he's there with his teammates now. So very good news there. Obviously, the worst case scenario in those things is possible paralysis. So it looks like that has been avoided. So everybody's relieved with that.
Well, good news for sure. Moving to baseball news, Seattle's Raleigh hit his 45th home run of the season yesterday to lead everyone. How close is he to some records here?
Yeah, there's a couple he's closing in on. First, most home runs by a catcher ever is 48 by Salvador Perez. Like I said, he's at 45 now with 43 games left. He's on pace for 61. That one certainly is well within range. Also, most home runs by a switch hitter, 54 by Mickey Mantle, so he's definitely within range of that one too. Meanwhile, his Seattle Mariners have now won 7 straight games. They're just half a game behind Houston in the AL West. Now, another team that's hot, Milwaukee Brewers, they won their 9th in a row yesterday, coming back from a 5-run deficit to beat the Mets. They host the Pirates then tonight, who are last place in the NL Central. Elsewhere yesterday in baseball, Justin Verlander recorded his 3500th career strikeout. He's just the 10th pitcher ever to reach that amount. Now, unfortunately, he got the loss also yesterday, gave up 5 runs in 5 innings, just 1-9 on the season. Of course, the guy is 42 years old, so he was probably overdue to finally have a not so great season like he's having right now. So tough to see Verlander, if you're a Verlander fan, going through this, but he's had a great career if this could be it.
Well, we'll watch for that for sure.
We'll watch for that for sure.
And Davis Almas, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.